The Nashville Predators kick off training camp tomorrow. Today, we'll tell you what has to happen to get Luke Evangelista there and avoid a worst case scenario.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks again so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Tuesday shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio, and friends, I have a partner in crime.
That you do. I am Emma Lingan, and I'm an NHL reporter and host for the Hockey News.
Well, the Predators prospects wrapped up their tournament in Florida yesterday, and now all eyes are focused on the start of training camp tomorrow. But with just 24 hours to go, Nashville still has not signed Luke Evangelista. Today, we're going to tell you what we are hearing about a deal, what needs to happen to get a deal done, and what that could look like. So, Emma, a lot to talk about. I did not think we would be talking about Luke Evangelista's contract at this point, but we're going to do that in just a minute. But before we get into talking about hockey and talking about contracts and Luke Evangelista, we just want to acknowledge and send our thoughts to the Wiesblatt family. Of course, Emma and I, big fans of Ozzy and Oasis Wiesblatt. And their brother Orca, we found out on Monday, was killed in an automobile accident. And this is one of those times where our job is to word, and there just aren't words. But we don't want to dive into hockey talk and pretend like there isn't something bigger in the world going on and something bigger that matters to hockey fans, to this precious family, to the franchise, and to everybody who has been involved at some point in some way or another with this family.
Yeah, it was just, devastating news. He was the oldest brother, but he's only 25 years old. It's just tragic. And, hockey is and I say this a lot because it's true. Hockey is very much a family, and you feel very connected with the people whose paths you cross with. And I think that even though, we never met Orca personally, obviously we're big fans of Ozzy and Oasis, and have closely followed this family and their story for a while now. So it does hit you hard. Even if it's not someone you knew personally, it's still someone that you feel connected to, a family that you feel connected to. And definitely our hearts and our thoughts are definitely with the entire family, because it's just unthinkable to imagine what they're going through right now. And I know that the Predators also released a statement saying that, asking that everyone respect the privacy of the family, and just saying that they're supporting them through this time, whatever that means for them. And so I would maybe echo that when it comes time for training camp to start. If there's any questions about where the Wiesblatts are and when are they going to show up and things like that, let's maybe not, because it's not, that's not what's important here.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those moments that changes the importance of everything that happens on the ice. And again, we word for a living, but there just aren't words. There just aren't words for this. Like Emma said, our hearts are with this precious family. We're going to try to pivot. It's going to be really awkward. It's going to be really difficult, but our job now is to pivot and cover the Nashville Predators. And so we're just going to awkwardly do that. And we're going to talk about the topic that is kind of at the forefront of people's minds when it comes to hockey business and this franchise right now. And that is the fact that As of the time of this recording, I feel like I should get paid for the number of times I have said that in relation to the Luke Evangelista contract. But as of the time of this recording, Luke Evangelista remains unsigned. And this, I did not see this being a situation we would be in 24 hours before training camp kicked off. I'm very surprised that this is where we are, and a little bit alarmed.
Yeah, I think there's a lot about this that surprises me. We've gotten the reports that came from Sportsnet earlier this week about how the two sides are still, quote, far apart in terms of salary and AAV. And the report from Sportsnet also had said that the idea of a long-term contract has now been taken off the table and that they're only focusing on a bridge deal. And that surprised me because I quite honestly don't see how either side benefits from a longer term deal in this situation.
Right.
We had always
Right.
assumed it was going to be a bridge deal. 2 years, 2 to 3 years at 3.5 million is kind of the ballpark that I had assumed. And so to hear that this is a new development that we're just now taking long-term extension off the table, I'm like, oh, okay.
Was it on the table?
I don't think I ever knew it was on the table. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where I'm not sure how either side would really benefit from longer term in this particular case with this particular player. He's a player who, arguably has a higher ceiling than what we've seen.
Mhm.
But he hasn't really been given the opportunities consistently given the opportunities to show that. And so it's one of those where if you're Nashville, you probably don't want to invest in him, for whatever, 7, 8 years because you don't know what you have in him yet. So it would make more sense to do a shorter term deal. And if you're the player, it would obviously make more sense to do a shorter term deal. Cap is going up. You have these
Mhm.
next couple years to prove that your ceiling is what everybody thinks it is, and you can then revisit this, come back to the table in 2 or 3 years and say, okay, now I've proven my worth and I want to go make some more money, whether that's here in Nashville or somewhere else. So like I said, it's one of those situations where I really didn't think that we would be here having this conversation. It was kind of like the one thing that I thought would be obvious was the term.
Right.
And it's like, no, that's the thing that we've agreed to take off the table. Like, I really don't know. I mean, I do kind of wonder, it does make me question how much is Evangelista asking for here, because
Right.
if this
How far apart
holdout.
are they? How far apart is
Right,
far apart?
right. So I just don't, I mean, I don't know. Again, if you're using the Tommy Novak contract as like a benchmark, only because it was the latest. I mean, he wasn't an RFA, he was going to be a UFA, but still, under Barry Trotz, that was like the last extension, kind of like same generation of
Mhm.
forwards, but he was also a center, and centers tend to get paid more. So if you're using that like 3 by 3.5, that's kind of what I was going off of for Luke Evangelista. I'm like, somewhere in this neighborhood will probably land. And so that really just makes me wonder, like, what are they asking for? Like, is it that
Right.
that Evangelista's camp is asking for just an obscene amount of money, or is Barry Trotz trying to like severely lowball him? Which, I think that the reality is like the answer is probably somewhere in between those two things. But right now we really just don't know. And it is the one thing we do know is that it is surprising that we're here talking about this at this stage.
Yeah, this was one of those things I thought was going to be an easy check mark over the summer. And it, of course, GMs and players don't come out to the media and say, you know what, I'm going to play hardball with this guy and I'm going to drag it out and we're going to play chicken financially. Nobody says that. But also, this is not a situation where you feel like there is all of this no man's land in between the two sides. How are they far apart? Even if you go to the fringes of what I think the framework is, it still shouldn't be this far apart. So this is a little bit confounding. Coming up, we're going to hear from Barry Trotz on what he had to say at the end of the season about Luke Evangelista's deal. We're also going to weigh what leverage Luke has in these negotiations. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is finally here, and FanDuel is making sure that you are ready for all those kickoffs with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You're going to love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether it's those player props, building a same game parlay, or jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's going to make every game a little bit more exciting, whether you are watching your favorite team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting fanduel.com to get started. That's fanduel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Emma, we had talked about, this seemed like it was going to be something that was going to be very easy to wrap up. This is what Barry Trotz had to say at his end of the season press conference when it came to re-signing Luke Evangelista.
If it was up to me, I'd have the deal done right now. I've talked to his agent, and his agent, we're started the discussions. Obviously, Luke is one of the guys that we're going to have to get signed. The full intention to get him signed sooner rather than later. I'm just looking at my list of guys here. Obviously, on Luke is a key young guy that we want to get signed.
So it seemed like, again, this was going to be a box to check off. But here is something that Barry Trotz went on to say in that conversation. He went on to say that agents were still trying to get a feel for the market, and that slows down the process a little bit. And this is something that you and I have touched on over the offseason as we've discussed different contracts and different players. The market is changing, and this is kind of an odd time for general managers and for agents to understand what a good deal is going to look like 3 seasons from now, because the cap is going up, player values are changing, roles, are having different values. The market is being reset by big players. So I don't know how much of the big picture is playing into this delay. I really hope that's part of it, because again, I come back to, where are you all that you're far apart?
Yeah, and what's interesting about it is we have talked about this before and how the market is changing, how the landscape is changing. But again, I come back to most of that hinges on term. And term
Right.
seems to be the thing that is not really the issue anymore. So it's like we've agreed on short term. So what's the problem? Like, this is one of those things where it's like, I get it, no one knows what a good deal is going to look like 3 years from now. And I understand that. But if the deal is going to be no more than 3 years maximum,
It can be bad. It can be bad for 3
bad.
years.
Like, yeah. So it's one of those things where I truly am, I'm just kind of baffled by this, and it does make me wonder. I don't mean, I don't like to stir the drama cauldron, but it's worth questioning. Is this whole thing going to damage or strain the relationship between player and team, will it go so far as, they explore the trade route? I mean, it really does make you wonder a lot of things, because this just seemed like you said, it's like this was just a box to check. We knew it was going to happen. And it was, and you and I have talked about this before, that this is a player who fills a unique role for Nashville, not just on the ice, but I think that in terms of his age, his development, his timeline, I mean, Nashville doesn't have a lot of guys who are part of the now and the not yet. It's pretty
Yes.
much him and Fedor Svechkov. And I mean, and then you've got like Zach LaRue and guys like that. But I mean, really, like, he was kind of it. And
Him.
so he's kind of a key, transitional piece in this whole thing, or you assume he is. Which is, I mean, maybe that's the argument that his camp is making, like, hey, you need us, like you need
Right.
us more than we need you, kind of thing. So I really don't know. It's just speculation, but yeah, so much of it is just, I don't even know it. Sure.
It's so peculiar. Like, that's the only word it's just peculiar. I think you have hit on something that I think could be a part of the conversation, talking about what is Luke Evangelista's leverage in this? What could possibly be weighing for kind of quote unquote his side? He is 23 years old. He has 172 NHL career games. And I do think you're right. There is, we've joked about it. There is a sandwich with no meat in it between the now and the not yet. And there is nobody in the middle. And you have to have that guy. And yes, there's Svechkov and there is Zach LaRue, but you want somebody with a little more seasoning. And I think Luke Evangelista is a guy you've got to have in there for continuity, whether it is just culture continuity or not. This is a piece that you don't really have another one of. And I think that should be something that Luke brings to the table. The other thing that I would point out, if I were Luke Evangelista's agent, and I am not, because I can't imagine the anxiety with that job, but he has showed a glimpse at the end of the season of potential. You look at Luke Evangelista's season last year, and in his last 23 games of the season, he scored half of his goals and half of his points in the last 23 games. And guess who he was playing with the majority of those 23 games, my friends? It was players like Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Michael Bunting. We're talking top 6 players. If you look at his time on ice, the difference is significant from the first 2/3 of the season to that final 23 games of the season. There is a significant difference. And so I feel like if I'm Luke Evangelista, I am bringing my stats to the table and saying, you know what? You may have been disappointed in me before, but I've been one of the guys on a short leash in a smaller role. And look what I can do if you give me the opportunities that he probably feels like he's earned. And I kind of see that point. I see that point for Evangelista.
Well, and it wasn't just this past year too. We saw it the year before when in the playoffs. Now, forgive me, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I mean, I think we all came away from that. Now, granted, we came away from that season thinking a lot better of this entire team. But specifically Evangelista, this was one that I think, I don't think this was something where, oh, we bought into the hype too soon. I mean, like, Evangelista, well, actually, you know what? Let's go back one more year. So his rookie season when he made his well, technically, he
Not his
wasn't a
rookie
rookie.
season, yeah.
Yeah,
So
because he
weird.
only played 24 games, so he was still a rookie the next year. But anyway, his debut season, we'll never forget his NHL debut it was in Nashville against Pittsburgh, and he laid out Malkin in his first game, and we were like, oh, okay, hello, Luke Evangelista. And then he was part of that, that final stretch of that season where all the veterans either got hurt or traded, and it was this influx of youth. It was Tommy Novak, it was Evangelista, it was Igor Afanasiev, it was, this younger core that was coming up. And he was a huge part of that. And so you start to think like, okay, we can see what he can do. And in that situation, he was playing big minutes. Why? Because he had to, because everyone
Right.
else was gone. Like he had
Yeah.
to. And he thrived in that. And then you go now to the 23-24 season where he again like got off to maybe a slower start, but by the end of the year and then into the playoffs against Vancouver, no one on that team really had a good playoffs. But I think if you look at his performance during the playoffs, especially, I think he would get compared a lot to Tommy Novak, who kind of got ragdolled in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Evangelista actually held his own, and we all came away from that thinking like, ooh, we can see it. It's
Mhm.
it's bubbling. We can see it. And then he came into this most recent season, and he did have some injuries that kind of it made it harder for him to get into a groove at the beginning of the season. So I understand that. But then by the end of the year, once he was getting those top 6 minutes, that brings us to the present and what you were just talking about. It's like, look at that.
There it is.
Opportunities and he delivers.
Yeah. And I think that is something that Evangelista probably is bringing to the table. Look at what I've done. No, I don't have this, this huge volume of work and these incredible stats. But when I've been given the chance, and I think that's a very important phrase, when I have been given the opportunity, I have shown that I have potential there. Coming up, we're going to talk about the flip side of this coin. What could Barry Trotz be thinking as this negotiation continues to drag out? Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at Indeed. You just realized your business needs to hire someone like yesterday. So, how can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If you are in that spot where you need the right hire and the pressure's on, every day without the right person feels like a business setback. That is exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. All right, Emma, feels like we've been pumping up Vange's tires here through that last segment, but we do have to sit down and say, okay, Barry Trotz has some points he would probably also like to make as we chit chat about money over coffee. And one of them is what I just said. Luke does not have this high volume of work. And so Barry Trotz can say, we don't know for sure what you bring and what you're worth. Yes, you looked great in this last stretch of the season playing top 6 minutes, but is that who you are? And do I want to pay you in hopes that that is who you are? And I personally do have those Tommy Novak flashbacks of we are paying you based on projection. And that did not pan out. And I wonder if Barry Trotz is like, fool me once, but you ain't gonna fool me twice. Different kid, but same life lesson. So I think there's something to that for Barry Trotz.
I think there's got to be something to that. I mean, I would be disappointed in Barry Trotz if there wasn't something to that. It's like, have we learned nothing? And now I'm not saying that Luke Evangelista is Tommy Novak, but
Right.
there's similarities in the situation here where, like you said, you are paying someone based on their potential. And that's something that he may not want to do now, especially when you add in the extra layer of the market changing and everything like that. So that's a big part of it. The other thing I wonder, and pure speculation on my part, I am just saying that up front. And this, quite honestly, it has less to do with Evangelista and more to do with the organization and where they're going. Earlier, I mentioned Evangelista is like one of the only players who can be part of the now and the not yet. Part of me wonders if Barry Trotz has the idea in the back of his mind that, hey, if this season goes south real quick the way last season did, am I going to pull the plug and just go full rebuild? And if that's the case, then maybe he does want to keep his options open of like, let me not lock in anything long term so I can keep some flexibility in case the situation arises where I need to just completely tear it down to the studs and start from scratch. Now, again, I don't think signing one player in Luke Evangelista is going to preclude you from that.
Right.
But it's just, again, I'm spitballing here. I'm thinking maybe that's where the whole term situation came in to play, where maybe, Barry Trotz is weighing, well, what's more important to me, the future, like the trajectory of this organization or our commitment to this one player? So part of me wonders, like, maybe he's just trying to keep his options open,
Right.
for the short and long term. But again, that's even that. I'm like, okay, it's just one player. But then again, you think about it, okay, one player, it sets the precedent for future situations. So I just, yeah, I really, those are kind of the first things that come to mind in terms of like what Barry Trotz's thought process would be here.
And this would be the season where Trotz is going to have to make a decision, because if you look at the UFAs coming up at the end of this season, you're looking at some guys that if it does not go well, you could opt to move on from them and go, you know what we're going to do? We're going to bring up all the youth right now. And this is the season where Trotz is going to have to make a decision. And while it's great to have Evangelista bridge that gap, is he one of the core guys for the future? Barry Trotz has to kind of make a decision on that. And again, it's hard to say with the body of work that Luke has. Here's the one thing I will say as I look at this, Emma. There is a lot of worst case scenarios, but I think what needs to happen, and this is regardless of the X's and O's and the dollars and the term, Barry Trotz really needs to sign a good deal. Like, he just needs this to be a deal where everybody goes, okay, yeah, okay, I see that. That makes sense. That's because I think people are a little twitchy about Barry Trotz right now. I think there are some deals on the books that people have problems with. I'm not saying that they're all bad. I'm saying they are deals that people are like, ooh, maybe not what I would have done. And Barry Trotz, like, you want to come out of this going, I GM'd that. I GM'd the fire out of that. Because he really hasn't GM'd the fire out of a lot yet. It's not been great.
We maybe thought he did last July, but then it turned out he very much did not. So he needs to make a good deal. But again, I keep coming back to, and I know I sound like a broken record, but it's like, what's the issue? If you're like, if we know it's going to be short term, which quite frankly, again, when it just came out in the last couple of days that, oh, they've taken a long-term extension off the table, and like just now they took it off the table. Like, why was it on the table for that long? Like, for either side, I don't see what they benefit from. So I think at this point, like you said, it's like, yeah, you need a good deal, but at this point, any deal that's I think less than 3 years is a good deal. Like,
Yeah.
unless he is I mean, I don't know, maybe he is asking for an obscene amount of money. But I just I don't know. I don't
I
know.
don't know. I think it would be hard to come out of this with a deal that's so terrible, and yet I have a fear. I think the other thing we have to be realistic about is what is the worst case scenario, Emma? And I think the worst case scenario is training camp kicks off and Luke Evangelista is nowhere to be found. And this is so bad on so many levels. It's so bad, Emma. And it's not just because, like, oh, we're missing this key player, Luke Evangelista. This team was so bad last season. They don't have, even after 82 games and 84 years, they still don't know who their top 6 are. And Luke Evangelista has to be a part of that conversation. And if he is not there, you are getting nowhere. And this team has to get somewhere, and they got to get somewhere in training camp fast. This could be a dumpster fire again.
I mean, for a team who, like, we've now acknowledged, like, one of their biggest issues was chemistry, having potentially one of your key players not at training camp is a disaster. And I think that, this is a kid in Luke Evangelista who has emerged as a legitimate candidate for a top 6 forward role. And his potential absence now from training camp is now going to severely limit the coaching staff's availability, or the coaching staff's ability rather, to actually test out different line combinations,
Yes.
build what works, offensive schemes that they might be developing around his style and his, playmaking instincts. They might not come to fruition, and they can't be practiced live. So it's even if the resolution of this is that he holds out for a few weeks and then signs a deal and joins them halfway through camp, even then I worry, because that's not going to be enough time for this particular team in the situation that they're in and the problems that we saw them have last year. It's bad. And then, of course, I think we got to say it. I mean, I mentioned it in passing earlier, but we got to just put it out there. There is a possible scenario in which Luke Evangelista gets traded, just because Barry Trotz does not want to go into camp with this, hanging over his head, hanging over the organization. But I do wonder, like, if you're trading him, you're just trading his rights, unless you do a sign and trade. So for whatever amount that he's asking for, that Evangelista is asking for, it's like, if the Predators aren't going to pay it, is there another team out there that will? I mean, you really kind of wonder. So I don't know if it's like, and would it be a team that he'd want to go to? Not that he has any say in the matter at this point in his career, but still, I mean, you're looking at teams with a ton of cap space being like Pittsburgh or Chicago or Buffalo, maybe, as they try to replace JJ Peterka. So, I mean, like, I don't know.
Be careful
I
what
just,
you wished for. $5 million might spend differently on chicken wings in Buffalo in February than you think. Not that I don't love Buffalo. I do. I think it's one of the best cities in the whole. I love Buffalo, but you know what I'm saying.
I do. So it's just, I don't know, but I mean, those are the realities that we have to consider here. That, that is what could end up happening.
Best case scenario, friends, is that we release this podcast and 5 minutes later, news drops that Luke Evangelista signed a deal. Here we are talking about it. We are doing God's work. We are doing our part to peer pressure the two sides into getting it done, even if it makes us look ridiculous.
Listen, we are recording this, it's not live. So of course now I have been checking the internet repeatedly as we record this. Be like, just, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It hasn't happened at the time of this recording. if it does happen between the time we record and the time it comes out, we are not recording another one because we just don't have the time. But all of our arguments are still valid
Still
in
valid.
this whole
That's
conversation
right.
in terms of how did we get here? Because regardless, even if it's announced, if a new contract is announced today, it's still worth talking about why did it take this long.
Oh my gosh, yes. This is completely peculiar. This was not anything on my radar, and I thought we had seen it all last season, Emma. I was not prepared for more shock and awe.
Sure.
Here we
Sure.
are. Here we are. Now, if Luke Evangelista signs a contract, we will hop on, give you our quick reaction video, and then dive into the details on another episode tomorrow. But again, training camp is kicking off, and we want to talk about training camp. So if you have a question about the Nashville Predators going into training camp, drop it in the comment section on this video because we are going to be doing a training camp mailbag. What do you want to know about this Nashville Predators team ahead of Thursday's on ice kickoff? Tomorrow they're going to be doing meetings and physicals, but Thursday the on ice portion is going to kick off. What are your questions? Let us know. We will answer them to the best of our ability. What is going on with Evangelista? Hopefully he will have signed by now. Emma, before we log off and watch the news drop before our very eyes, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan. You can find my work both at the Hockey News and on the Fan-Sided Network, specifically Predlines, at both places, actually. Both the Hockey News wraparound show, which dropped on Monday, and at the Fan-Sided Network, I have been covering this Evangelista story from a more national perspective. So definitely go check those out as well, because a lot of people are talking about it.
Oh my goodness. I want to not talk about it anymore and talk about, look at this deal. It's so beautiful. We brought it to fruition, Emma and I. Yeah. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio. You can find me on social media at @AnnK_Mama on Ice. I'll be doom scrolling, waiting for the news to drop on a contract for Vange before they get on the ice on Thursday. We'll see. That is going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks again so much for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with an all new episode. We will see y'all then.